Hi, it's Lisa. I was watching Vegan Gains video about Jillian Michaels just this morning, and it got me thinking about The Biggest Loser. The Biggest Loser is a show that I used to watch a few years ago, and it had Michelle Bridges and this other guy called Shannon. And I remember how the contestants would be eating apples at night, and then Michelle Bridges would scold them for eating an apple because it went above their certain amount of calories that they were allowed for that day. And I thought how dumb it was that they would have to restrict eating apples. But anyway, I was Googling what happens to the Biggest Loser contestants after the show. I found this article by the Huffington Post, and the article is called "The Truth About Life After the Biggest Loser." And I wanted to comment a bit on it, so I'll read it out and I might stop and comment as I go. It's no secret that The Biggest Loser is unhealthy. Outlets like the New York Times itemized the hazardous medical implications of such extreme and rapid weight loss as early as 2009. Yet The Biggest Loser is flawed beyond the questionable practice of more than 6 hours of exercise a day. Ultimately, the concept of diets, absurdly rigorous or not, are faulty attempts at healthy living. It goes on and says Huff Post TV spoke to past contestants to see what the real world was like after The Biggest Loser, and the techniques they used to keep or attempt to keep the weight off. Despite the intensity of the experience on campus, often returning to the real world was a more rigorous task. After Rachel Fredrickson's controversial win at the end of this most current season, health concerns relating to the show resurfaced with greater force than ever before. While these issues are valid, the most crucial failing of the show is its unrealistic expectations about life after the ranch and the relative abandonment of contestants once the finale has aired. One of the complaints I've heard most frequently is the lack of aftercare, said Kai Hibbard of Season 3. Gary Deckman, the first man to ever step on the Biggest Loser scale, talked about struggles for those who don't receive promotional deals or head into health industry careers. He said he might have kept the weight off if he stayed on the ranch, admitting it is too difficult to maintain with work and a family. So my comment on that is that you don't have to head into a promotional deal or have a health industry career to lead a healthy lifestyle. And maybe Gary Deckman would have kept the weight off if he stayed on the ranch, but it would have become increasingly harder because what they're focused on The Biggest Loser is calorie counting and restricting your calories so that you don't gain weight. So basically the contestants are starving themselves, and I don't think starving yourself long term is a solution. The article goes on and says, as a runner-up from Season 1, Deckman received a deal with 24-hour fitness, which included 300 training sessions provided by the gym. He spoke about diligently working out in the year after his time on the show, sometimes attending between 3 and 5 of these sessions a week, and eventually running the Los Angeles Marathon also with sponsorship. But Deckman laments that since these deals have run out, he is kind of back to his pre-Biggest Loser state. So that's pretty sad that he had to rely on motivation related to sponsorship in order to keep fit, and it wasn't easy to keep the weight off. On the show, Deckman lost 71 pounds from a starting weight of 227. In recent seasons, contestants pushed 400 pounds at the beginning of the show. As the average size increased, so too did the rigorousness of the show. While Deckman spoke of working out around 6 hours a day on campus 10 years ago, contestants like Mike Morelli spent closer to 8 or even 12. So imagine that, working out for 8 to 12 hours a day to lose weight. That's so unnecessary and very taxing on the body. If anything, then the struggle of the transition back to a daily life, which includes other obligations beyond eating healthfully and working out, it is even more difficult. Hibbard had a horrific experience developing an eating disorder as a result of the show. Morelli, who was also the runner-up from his season, had a positive experience on campus. However, attempting to set unrealistic requirements for himself, he faltered in the years that followed. I would do stuff for fun, like once I just decided I'll be a vegetarian, and then I did that for 9 months and got sick of it, he said. I think even though it does take effort to be a vegan, if you know how to do it right, if you know how to eat enough for your body weight and your activity level, it's not really as hard as people think. I was saying before in another video that a lot of cravings for food come from just not eating enough, and as long as you're eating enough of fruits, veggies, starches, getting the majority of your calories from carbohydrates, eating 10 grams of carbohydrates per kilo of body weight a day, if someone does that, it's going to be a lot easier to stay on track than someone who is starving themselves on what they perceive to be a very restrictive diet. To be fair, Morelli is currently a trainer, and employment in the health industry makes it easier to fit workouts into his schedule. But the reality is that setting rules and regulations for oneself is what is so aggressively unsustainable. Setting out to diet is a failure in and of itself, said Marissa Sappho, New York University professor and psychotherapist specializing in eating disorders. We know from decades of research, 95% of people regain weight, usually plus some. An obsession with calories and numbers and nutrition disconnects us from our intuitive process, Sappho explained. And when you think about it, such numbers on the scale and calorie counts are at the heart of the Biggest Loser program. Although losing weight so quickly is most often dangerous, leading to cardiac and other issues, Sappho believes there is hope for contestants of the show if they can find their way to intuitive eating. Part of the hope might mean shifting their own ways of thinking about their body, shedding that shame they might still carry with them, and focusing on their sense of self, she said. For those attempting to lose an extreme amount of weight, Sappho recommends a lifestyle change instead of extreme dieting. As human beings, our perpetual goal is to be satiated in one way or another, and denying that from ourselves in terms of food often leads to binge eating. We're all born knowing how to eat and how to stop when we're full, she said, and the idea of eating intuitively is about listening to your body rather than depriving yourself. You can have a bagel or two that you're craving for breakfast, but maybe that means you choose a salad for lunch. Maybe that means you go to the gym later that day. I was watching a YouTube video just last night of someone on a low carb diet, and this lady used to be 500 pounds and she got down to 300 pounds, I think. Well, I don't actually know how much she went down by, but she lost a lot of weight judging by her before and after pictures, and she is currently still on the low carb diet, and she is restricting her calories so much that it looks like she's trying to eat as little as possible. And one of her meals was this little piece of chicken or this little piece of meat that was cooked in olive oil, and she would have a little bit of salad with it, and that would be one meal. So I don't know exactly how much she eats in one day, but obviously with that kind of eating and with the amount of weight loss that she experienced, she was obviously severely calorie restricting and still is. And there's people in the comments of her videos who are arguing about how much olive oil she uses and saying how even if she did use that much olive oil, she's still under 600 calories for that meal, so she's going well. But if we assume that she's having 600 calories a day, or not even her, but say someone else is eating 600 calories for one meal 3 times a day, they're only eating 1800 calories, and that is not enough for someone who is 300 pounds. I eat more than that, and I weigh just over a third of what she weighs. And I think the trick to lasting weight loss is to make it a lifestyle, as what the article recommended. And with the intuitive eating, it's good for those who know how many calories they need, but not so good for those who come from eating disordered backgrounds. I don't have personal experience with an eating disorder, so I can't comment too much on that, but I think that if someone is intuitively eating and their stomach has shrunk from eating so little, their intuition will tell them to eat less than the amount that they should. So that's not really a smart option. I think at the beginning of starting a high carbohydrate, plant-based diet, you do need to count your calories, and that was what I was doing when I first got onto my vegan diet. I was doing high raw, high fruit, 80-10-10 style, and I did sometimes have cooked dinners, but I would track in Chronometer how many calories I was getting just to make sure I was having enough. It wasn't to make sure I was under a certain amount. It was just to make sure I was eating enough for my body weight so that I wouldn't get too skinny. And even now, I don't necessarily count the calories. I don't use chronometer anymore, but I do know just by estimating how many calories I'm getting. And it's in order to eat enough, and to eat more than enough actually, rather than not enough. So that's what I do, and that is what has worked for me. And eating like this has actually freed me from junk food cravings and from craving bad foods. It's freed me because I know what's good for my body, and I don't feel guilty eating anything that I put in my mouth. And if I do have something a bit more fatty or something else that's not so healthy, then I know how to get back on track. I know that I need to eat more fruit, and I need to eat more root vegetables and get in the carbohydrates so that I'm not craving bad food anymore. And that's the problem. The problem is that in shows like The Biggest Loser, it's all about counting calories and counting carbohydrates as well. I mean, what crazy person scolds someone for eating an apple? Only Michelle Bridges would do that, and only on a show like The Biggest Loser. So my advice to anyone who is calorie restricting to lose weight is to just stop and get on a healthy plant-based diet where you will feel satiated, where you will not feel hungry, where you're getting enough carbohydrates to fuel your body, to fuel your brain, and to fuel your activity level. You won't feel deprived. If you're doing it the right way, you won't feel deprived at all. So I look forward to hearing from you, and see you in my next video. Bye.